Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
Greetings, cohesive leaders. Here with us is a good friend of mine, Will Crosswell. Will, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Troy. Ben, good to be with you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
It is super to have you. And of course, we go back a long way. And Will, you are famous, in the credit union industry. You were the first protege of the Carolinas. At the time, it was South Carolina Credit Union League, and now the Carolinas Credit Union League. And you and I worked together to create a mentoring program that we launched at the league, which, by the way, is still in action today.
Fantastic.
So
I was hoping you say that. So
yeah, nice to know that things that we start don't necessarily always go away. Of course, the team has modified and made some revisions. The team has done a great job leading that. So really excited to have you and share some things, have you share some stuff with us today.
No, glad to be here. And, I will say it was one of those cautious moments. Like I got to announce my uh-oh in front of thousands of listeners at this point. So hopefully, hopefully all goes well here. So,
and not only thousands of listeners, but we are international. So not only have we got international,
let's go.
International downloads. So we're very excited about that. So good. All right. So our first question to you is to tell us something about you that is not on your resume.
So that's not on my resume. Well, at this point, I have successfully ran 2 marathons, so it's not on the resume at this point. So ran in Philadelphia whenever it was. This was November 2022. It's around 20 degrees, 15, 20 mile an hour crosswinds. It's horrible experience, but I finished, and that was the main part. I did cross the finish line, and then the second one was 2 months ago in Chattanooga with a buddy of mine, also named Will.
Oh, great. So I have a friend of mine, and which Ben knows also, Ryan, and he is now an ultra marathoner. He is doing these crazy 50 mile, 100 mile, 120 mile. I don't even want to drive in the car that long.
But to hear those stories of what they do and how they're able to just go shopping, or they go out to eat, or they go mow their lawn, like after running 20, 30, 40, 50 miles. It's, I run 5 and feel like I need to take a nap, right? So it's to see what they do. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, really great. All right. So Ben's going to kick up the next question here.
So, Will, we want to introduce you to our listeners, but we like to do that in 2 phases. One is your identity, so character traits, behavior traits that you feel you're known for, you want to be known for, or friends, colleagues would describe you as, followed by roles, titles, hats you wear.
Perfect. So as far as identity of how I think people would identify me through certain qualities, I would say, I bring a lot of joy. It's, things to the position and, those that are around me. Bring that sense of compassion, and then I think from folks feeling as if they can, that approachable, that also, that listening part to them, where there's listening with no judgment, which is hard to do, because it's listening to be curious, not to respond or try to, provide them with something. I really want to try to understand where they are. And I do like to bring the fun. I am known for the horrible dad jokes, and and it's one of those that if I get a successful eye roll after launching one, then I know I've done my job. But nonetheless, I'm the fun dad at home, and I try to bring that fun into the workplace too. And I think the last thing is that I do and leading with wanting to find ways to motivate people. I think finding that itch and finding that thing that makes them tick, that what makes them get out of the bed each morning, and knowing that if I can help them drive toward that, then lead them to what they want to do for being successful or productive or just being a good person.
Yeah, it's really great.
Awesome.
So
Well,
I have to. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
to say there's a joke in there about the two Wills doing the marathon somewhere. I let that one go, but since you love the dad jokes,
Well, obviously, if there's a will, there's a way. If there's two wills, there's there's at least you have a backup
Double
plan,
yeah.
right?
There's a double the way. Okay, so we got to do the dad jokes. So two of my favorite dad jokes work like this. Will, where do I keep all of my dad jokes?
I don't know, Dr.
I
Troy,
keep
where?
I keep them in the database. Okay, great, good. And my other one is this. Why is Santa Claus such a good gardener?
I don't know why.
Because he likes to ho, ho, ho.
The game respects game, Dr. Troy. So
I know.
game-
I think we probably lost about half the listeners that tuned in at this particular
Well,
moment. But
if we have any left, I'll make them leave after this one. Will, what do you call a man who tells dad jokes but is not a father? Like myself, a faux pas.
All right, now I got to at least wrap this up with one, right? And then that's,
Yep.
of course, on the board here that I have, and it's I ordered a chicken and an egg online. I'll let you know what arrives first.
Love it.
love it.
Great.
All right.
All right. So
What
we
are your
learned about
roles?
who you are. Yeah. What are your roles? What hats do you wear? Responsibilities, things like that.
All right, so at the credit union, I, by title, Chief Retail Officer, but how I like to define it is my job is to help enhance, better, and improve the member experience for the credit union. So doing that through the branch network, we have 9 branches here in Southeast Pennsylvania, spanning the 5 counties. And then on top of that, still have the business development hat. That's what Troy first knew me as and kind of brought me into that business development officer down the small credit union in South Carolina, but still kind of bring that expertise into the credit union and oversee some of our programs from the insurance program as well as investments here at Ardent. But I, without getting to those details, my main task is I help, improve, enhance, and better the member experience for Ardent.
Well, we know this was really a tough one for you because you're just a high quality kind of guy. But let's share your uh-oh experience now. In sort of within earshot of thousands of listeners right now. Like, what would be your uh-oh experience that you want to share with us?
All right. Well, I will go to a event that happened many years ago. So, of course, much younger Will, not still the same haircut of Will, but much still younger in that sense. Is my boss at the time, I was working in business development, provided an opportunity for me to bring in a new business partner. And from their definition, this was known as a layup, right? And so, in that sense, it was a moment to shine in front of my boss and kind of have a big win for the team. But and my boss was even friends with someone within leadership, so kind of had that connection, so didn't have to worry about that. At least through that connection there already were fans of the credit union. So I guess fans, conceptually, before I got in there. So my task was really to present to their roughly 100 employees, of the credit union, the benefits to them. Now then, I assumed I could just walk in with my natural charm and natural ability to connect and use a template that I'd use for, kind of you have your general templates and then you edit them based on kind of who you're talking to. I didn't do a whole lot of that. I just kind of used what I had and said, let's roll in there and kind of get this layup, so to speak. Well, I may have got it successfully off the backboard, but it rimmed out and did not go through because, unfortunately, while I brought my usual energy, it was about 5 minutes in, I could tell that wasn't being returned, at least from the energy that I was giving. Heads were down, arms were folded, kind of people had like the cocked head look of, why? Almost asking like, why is he here? What's he bringing to us here? And body language was despondent, uninterested, and confused. And And when I pause for questions, usually as you go into these things, you try to think about, all right, what are they going to ask me, and what are some things that potential. Uh, Stumped on the first question, which was, where was your closest branch? Should be one that could have connected very easily to, but then, pause, kind of took the body shot in this case and tried to let them know quickly where that was, and that quickly diverted to, like, well, that's nowhere near me. And then you heard, from other people, that's nowhere near me. And then this, what was supposed to be a general info session, that someone from HR brought me into, turned almost a town hall of just like, of like, hey, well, then what do you do? So I thought at that point I could just try to provide some general info about the credit union, but what it turned into was, truly just one of a peppering of questions that grossly unprepared for. Because even though I had the owner's endorsement, I didn't have the employees' trust, and that's something that I shortchanged going into that presentation there. And I confused internal buy-in from somebody that, my boss knew, with audience alignment. And that was, if not one of like the biggest mistakes that sent me greatly down the rabbit hole there. So my goal at that point was just to leave unscathed, to leave whatever clothing I had on appropriate, so I could just get out of there and figure out, all right, how could I try to make this, at least tell my boss of what happened here. So anyway, that's kind of the basis here. I don't know if the other questions kind of develop, well, from that, but that was initial.
No, this is great, but I want to, before we go into our traditional questions, to do this, I want to just think for a minute. Like, this relates to so much that happens within a company. You have some level of trust that is extended to you, but somehow you misunderstand where that trust is between the others that you're creating. Like, you have to create the trust between the others as well as the trust that you have from the person who may have extended it to you. And I think that's what I heard in what you were saying that can be so relevant to employees today who are dissatisfied because they're not getting any training or developing, or they're being passed over for promotion because they're not really thinking about how they're creating that level of trust that they need to have in all areas of the organization.
No, absolutely. No, that's exactly right. And it's something that without, either talking to my boss or saying, hey, can I be in touch at contact with their contact to ask more about, who was I talking to? What's the demographics in the group? What are some financial questions that they ask them to at least get a gauge on how I can make sure I'm presenting something that's useful to them and not just, shades of gray within financial institutions of like, yeah, we can do that too. So it was a great learning moment for me in my my young career.
And it also sounded like you were a little overconfident, right? Was there a
Oh,
possibility
absolutely.
for that?
Yeah. Walked in cocky. I think because of the definition of thinking that I just had the layup here and all I needed to do was just walk in, click through the slides, and wait for the members to come rolling in was definitely overconfident and definitely just downright cocky.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you that you have to do your best every single time, regardless if there's only one person in the audience.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm serious. Ben and I met very similar to this 6 years ago. It wouldn't have happened had I have maybe just been, not as careful in the presentation or really giving myself, because what was supposed to be supposed to be a good grouping of individuals at this session that I was doing for Chamber of Commerce. It ended up only being like 4 or 5 people. Ben was one of them. But I got to spend so much more time with them individually that Ben and I really created a kind of an idea that maybe we should collaborate. And the next thing you know, here we are. It's Cohesion Culture History.
Yeah, here we are. Right.
So, Will, what did that mistake cost you? Both financially, social capital wise, like what was the impact, immediate impact?
Well, the immediate impact was much like when you get a bad grade on a test. You then have to talk to your parent about why you got that bad grade. We all remember those, those stories as kids. Well, I do the same thing with my boss at that point, was to go through, okay, so why did we fail this test here? Why did we go through it? And that was almost as grueling as having to go through the info session I had with that business partner, because then I had to just go through all the mistakes of like, not knowing my audience, right? Not knowing who I was talking to, not having a full grasp on the type of employees that I was speaking to and understanding their basic needs. So to your point, Ben, of like what it cost from a financial standpoint, at least from not me personally financially, but for the credit union was, potential members, who are going to be using their accounts on a daily basis and potentially for loans, the potential to have that group of employees come into us was impactful because you project, right, knowing that, okay, if I speak to 100, if I can get this many, and that 100, all right, so then you try to weigh what the potential revenue could be. And I got 0. So I mean, it was very easy math at that point because I didn't get any of them. And then from you bring up with social capital, which then my boss had to then say, well, then so tell me, how do you prepare for these sorts of things? So then it starts to get into like my the crux of like how I get ready for these things. Do I just wing it, based on kind of what I feel, how much energy do I need to exert, or what, Troy, what you brought up earlier of whether I'm speaking to the group of 100 or the group of 1, do I have the same methodology with each and every interaction, each and every presentation? So those are kind of the 2 big ones of just, the impact to the credit union for at least that month, the immediate one, and then the social capital, and then I guess social equity that I spent and then had to work to try to build back up. I mean, it can take so long to build trust and it's so quick to lose it. And I lost a great deal that day and had to find my way to get back into good graces.
And so what would you
Wow.
so what did you do now then to make sure that you didn't do it again? Like what steps did you take for the next time?
Well, I, in an effort to, because I'm someone that, need an easy thing to remember, from acronyms to try to keep myself like you know, now big into habits, making sure I'm building good habits for myself, is that the acronym put together aptly is PREP, right? And so for one, with P being like perception matters, knowing that how you show up is kind of how you're remembered, right? And so that's something that when I came in unprepared, wasn't prepared to answer questions, merely the credibility, not just for me, but for the credit union and those associated with it, what was an effect from that. And I think a lot of times in these moments when we think it's just about us and like me presenting and knowing that there is the ripple effect of how it affects other people. Uh, Second is that our part is like research is like respect, right? I didn't do enough homework. I didn't do enough time to like research who I was talking to. Uh, didn't put enough value into finding out, who I was speaking in that sense. So a smaller example that I do. So each week I do a weekly kind of like service and sales call with my managers and supervisors, right? And so throughout the week, you kind of build that agenda, knowing this is something else I've learned from that, building that agenda so that on Friday I review it, Saturday I review it, Sunday evening, and even Monday, add in some fine touches to it. And I had a conversation with a manager one time because they weren't providing enough info on the calls, right? So I was asking, so tell me, like, how do you prepare for these meetings? And they said, well, it's about 5 minutes before the meeting begins. That's when I start to piece together what I want to talk about. And it's like, well, hey, let's talk about that, And so that's where then helping them out, saying, hey, research is respect. Research is kind of showing that meeting. So that's P, that's R. E was expect the unexpected. And this is one where I could have expected the expected, if I just prepared for what questions that they would have provided for me. And then the last one was just that preparation kind of protects the opportunity. And I think knowing that it was provided to me, that I did have that trust and did have that social equity within my boss to, present in place for the credit union, and that I didn't do my job to kind of protect it in the sense that I didn't have the proper preparation for it.
And so the PREP is the PREP.
Yep.
And the P, just tell us one more time what each of those words singularly stand for.
So P, of course, perception matters. R, research is respect. E, expect the unexpected. And P, preparation protects opportunity. So you got the PREP.
Excellent. Good to know.
And we know we love our acronyms, so that's a good one, folks.
There you go.
It
now,
may end
do you
up
think? Well, did you end up coming up with that after this issue, or where did you determine that the PREP, or did the manager tell you that?
No, that was something that after my bad grade consultation afterwards
Okay.
to say, all right, so let's go through kind of my preparation, how I go about it, and knowing that I did have some good practices before, meaning that really leaning into research, and that's one thing through business development, right? It's knowing that each company, each individual is different, and so having to take the time to do the proper research in that sense, and where I didn't do that in this case. So I think if there's one that is trying to build good habits into knowing that it's to do the work, is that what shows up to make sure I'm like protecting that opportunity on the back end there. So for me, that was something that it's been fine tuned, and I will probably fine tune it again because that's what you should do, when it comes to a plan.
And do you coach others on this, like that work at your credit union? Do you give prep the acronym and teach others this concept?
I do, and that's something kind of brought that short story with one of the managers that used to work for me was to let them know that hey, whenever you're coming into a meeting, that
Dude, okay.
preparation doesn't begin 5 minutes before you start. That preparation for if you know it's on the calendar, know what's coming, you know the topic, and so it's coaching them to those ideas of saying like, hey, are you, did you do your research? Are you prepared for whatever questions may come your way? Um, do you know your audience? So it's kind of highlighting those things for them so that if they're in a meeting with me or if they're in a meeting with a business partner or with another department in the credit union, that they're ready for it.
So looking back now, hold on. Looking back now, how do you view that situation where you bombed, knowing that it produced this concept that you've now been able to teach others? How do you, looking back at it, how much of a impact does that egg on your face impact now?
Well, a couple of things. One, it's I try to run away from that feeling as much as possible, knowing that hey, if that's the sign, if that's the result of a lack of preparation, then my task is to make sure that I don't chase. I try to run. Certain feelings you chase, certain feelings you run away from, and that's one that I always try to keep in my mind of running away as in a I think in lots of cases we view like regrets or hey like you try to flush or squash certain bad things that happen, but those are the ones that are a lot of times the best teaching moments to solidify if maybe not only what to do but what not to do. And I think that's one of the things that I've grasped onto was that it's these moments of not letting it tear me down or not telling me, hey, I can't do this or hey, maybe this isn't for me, but using it as a block, using it as something to firm up my foundation to build better for the next time.
And so, Will, the things that you said about the prep, which is really good for a meeting, but I guess, for me, I was sitting here listening and thinking like, oh my gosh, this would be good for an interview.
Right.
This could be good for me maybe having a conversation that I feel that I need to have. And although in our teachings, Ben and I have some teachings of something we refer to as cohesive communication, and there's a specific framework for it, which is what he was referring to from an acronym perspective. It's like it's really good adding context to context. So let me just ask you then, how would you use those 4 letters to prepare for an interview?
So I will use that to prepare for an interview. I think one thing is I think for that first one there was just whenever I came in unprepared and was just missing answers. It's just that signal that wasn't invested, wasn't reliable, wasn't relatable. So that perception, that I think I try to lean into of knowing that if I come in, again showing you guys the respect and for this, knowing that hey, looking at what you've done before, listening to other podcasts, and figuring out, hey, how does this go? Knowing that, hey, I'll be ready for this kind of these kind of questions. And I think for another part of that interview of I mentioned the research part, but expect the unexpected, knowing that you guys love to throw unique questions out, to kind of challenge and to make things sound unique and different. And so some of it's like being able to know that my answers aren't going to always be perfect. They're not going to be like this perfectly crafted thing that's going to show up. But a lot of times those are where the golden nuggets are. So it's I think knowing that I'm not always going to have an answer for everything, but if I expect the unexpected, expect for those questions or curveballs to come, I've at least prepared myself knowing I've done the research and, all the perception side of it. And I think it's just also like showing with the opportunity to speak to, I'm just using this as an example, like speak to you guys of just knowing that if I, wasn't ready or wasn't able to share the story of how much it would have just wasted your time and wasted other people's time to just sit in on this moment to try to learn something from, a pretty big and monumental that has changed how I've gone about not just business partnerships or info sessions, but and a lot of things that I do.
And and it even goes further than just the interview for today. It's like an interview for a job. Right?
Right.
These are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself for an interview for a job. You shouldn't be taking all of that for granted. So even though it may be a friend of a friend who said, "Hey, go here and give them a call," and it becomes like, "Oh, well, this is a cursory interview kind of thing," you really should be doing your homework, which really makes sense. That take pride in what you're doing, be accountable for what you're doing. So I really loved those 4 words again: that perception, or perspective. I think it was a perspective. Is that the word?
Like perception, kind of that
Perception.
Perception
perception.
matters.
Yeah. So your
Research is
perception.
respect.
Yeah. And then looking at the research, making sure you know what the company is, what's the culture of the company. Are you paying attention to the core values of the organization? What kind of community activities are they involved in? Do you know what the hours of operation are? Maybe what your demands would be, especially if a work-life integration is important to you. Certainly, then expecting the unexpected. You should always be prepared for what question do you think somebody's going to ask you that you may not have anticipated, keeping into realm with the nature of what you're doing. And then the last one is protecting.
The
Say that
opportunity.
for me again.
Yep. So like
Protect,
preparation protects the opportunity. So protect the
yeah,
opportunity would be the last one.
protect the opportunity. Yeah, real. I think this is really awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So no, it's interesting. As a lot of times working within retail and hiring new employees, of course, for the front line, there's always that question of like, tell us what you know about us. What do you know about Ardent? What do you know about the credit union? And it does kind of it's interesting as to how that can take the path on sometimes of where it goes, where the interview goes of how much research they've done about us and where they're potentially planning to spend at least 8 hours a day and leave 40 hours a week to work.
Yeah.
Do you think someone that has been able to successfully wing it and get through these meetings would hear this advice and heed it, or do they have to have one of those meetings before this makes sense? Because it all makes sense to me, but I can also imagine there's some folks that have been able to skate by for a while. Is it something that ego keeps them from doing, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that ego. I'd say it's something like, whenever it's one of those things that once it gets fed, in this sense, from a winging it perspective, it is tough to tame that beast. And I think it's something sometimes you do have to have those moments of reality hit in order to have that introspection to say, hey, what could I have done differently at this time? So what I hope for someone that may have a history in winging it, which look, I nearly got my PhD in winging it, and then decided to find a different career path here. So would suggest those who may be on that current education trajectory is to pause and say that there is going to be that moment, and it may not be the next meeting or the next interview or the opportunity, but there is going to be that time where someone is going to see through it, and that's where in this audience I had many people who saw right through the credit union emblazoned gear that I had on and knew that this guy doesn't know who we are. This guy doesn't have any investment into us potentially joining the credit union or being a part of what he's talking about. So my urgency to my fellow winging it crew is to either, even if you do one of these, and I think that's the other part, is that when it comes to trying a new habit or trying something different, is that, I got to knock out all these. If it's like, hey, if you've done your research, right, if you've done at least one of these, I think that at least creates that path of creating that better habit, so that whenever you do have those opportunities or in front of people or in an interview or one-to-one, that you are prepared.
That's great. And speaking of preparation and expecting the unexpected, Will, what was a question you thought we would ask you today that we didn't?
Who does your hair? No, it was.
Well, for those of you who are listening, Will is bald, so this is
Yes,
the
yes. For those at
two,
home, for those that are not viewing the
So
video, right?
the two hair jokes
bald or
that
just
happen.
shaving it yourself? Like, is it a choice?
Yeah, bald because I want to. How about that? You know?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the questions I thought that you were going to ask was um, essentially, and I think Ben, you kind of alluded to it, but I think a little bit step more. It's like, did this boss trust me again? Was I given another opportunity to present? Was I given the next, again, quote unquote, layup, or was I handed off to somebody else? And but to answer that potential question of like was I given the next opportunity? I wasn't. I had to watch someone else get the layup, get the honor, get the glory, and I mean that's another brick to that foundation that was laid to know that man don't just want the feeling of messing up in front of a group of people or disappointing my boss or letting them down, but then to see somebody else get the next one and run with it. That was hard. That was hard because it's not a big department, so everyone kind of knows what what you did or didn't do. So that was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, but the good news
One
for
ask
you is that you really stuck with it because you've had some promotion since then. So it's
That's
not
right.
been the end of the world, and I'm glad you
Right.
didn't take it as the end of the world.
Yeah, and knowing that and that what happens today is not forever, and so it's that there's a lot of times with anxiety and worry of thinking that am I going to get the next one? Am I going to have that next opportunity to kind of show? And so that's where you do the work, you do the prep, you do the time to make sure that whenever your name does get called, that you're ready.
Great.
I have a cool question on the mindset aspect of this. How does visualization play into your preparation? Do you do any type of visualization in preparation for prep while you're prepping?
I do need visualization. I do, and my my kids. I have two kids. One 10, the other one's about to be 6. Geneva and Thad, awesome kids, and so they're my best audience when it comes to a lot of times practicing some of these things out, knowing that if I can't keep their attention, which let me tell you, it's hard, knowing that a lot of times I have to make things more concise, but I think in a lot of ways it's taking that either visualization of all right, imagining yourself in that moment, all right, kind of either a lot of times either closing your eyes and picturing kind of yourself in that space, and then kind of all right, let me do like a mock trial of this situation with two of the uh, toughest individuals to keep their attention for longer than I say 5 minutes, but let's be real, it's like 15 seconds in this case, knowing that I got to bring the show. And so it does help to have both family and work sometimes merged together here in that sense. But and no, it's key because I think that's the other part where maybe lining up in another acronym here in that sense, but it's that practice, right? It's knowing that it's taking those moments to run through it, visualize yourself in the moment, find out, oh, okay, this is what I need to alter or change, or hey, now that I've kind of had this picture in my mind, what can I do to kind of alter that through the preparation piece?
It's great. So, Will, how will folks be able to get in touch with you?
Let's see. I am on LinkedIn, so of course you can check me out there. I'm on Instagram as well as Threads, same handle, W Crosswell. So follows on both of those channels as well. But those are probably the quickest way to get in touch with me, and I'm pretty responsive, as
That's
you
great.
guys have seen.
Well, one of the things you mentioned earlier in this, you talked about PhD, and I just wanted to let you know that I think you have achieved a PhD because you're a pretty happy dad.
Look at there, Troy,
I
for the win, for the
I mean,
win.
for the win. We started with a dad joke, had to end with a dad joke, so that'll be really great. But
Good
actually,
book.
our true ending comes like this. We really thank you for being a part of the Conversations with Cohesive Leaders podcast. Just really great to connect with you again, share this wonderful amount of wisdom that you shared with us. But Ben and I close out all of our Cohesion Culture programs reminding listeners for this mantra: you don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.